welcome to another edition of Time Out here on CBS News Dallas Fort Worth. Bill Jones along with George Teague. Hope everybody has had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. It's a short week for the Cowboys after winning over the Eagles on Saturday afternoon, Christmas Eve at AT&T Stadium. They play on Thursday night. Going to have a little extended Tennessee Christmas in Nashville against the Tennessee Titans. George, how was your Christmas? I understand you spent some of it on Christmas Eve out at AT&T Stadium watching the Cowboys victory.
It was. It made for I'm glad I got my Christmas present early because I was looking forward to that win on Christmas Eve. They did give me a few more gray hairs and all that, but then I got to relax and settle in because I got to spend some time with the grandkids and family on Christmas Day. It was awesome.
All right, that's great. You know, it's really strange, obviously, having a game on Christmas Eve. What was the atmosphere out at the stadium like on Christmas Eve?
It was pretty lively, actually. I was shocked to see the amount of people there that early. Even when I got there early, but it was the same old things. Lots of tailgating. The fans were into it. It got really, really loud quite a few times during the game. And of course, we had a few of the Eagles chants, ones that you can't say. But it was good.
Well, it adds to it when the Eagles are in town too. All right. So, what's your takeaway from that 40-34 win over Philadelphia? What's the big thing when you walked away from the stadium? You were thinking about this Cowboys team.
There are good and bad to it, and so I kind of left out of there with mixed emotions. And I think it was I was happy that Dan was able to put Dan Quinn. Speaking of being able to use so many defensive backs, I was wondering what he was going to try to do with the secondary. No, still gave up 355 yards passing, which is a lot. But it's kind of interesting to see. Some of the guys that they pulled up. So my takeaway in the end is as long as we can win the turnover battle and don't have unforced errors, a lot of times I think that we got a good chance of making it to the big dance, at the end of the year. Turnovers, man, kill you.
Yeah, that's right. And the Eagles found out in that game. You look at the Eagles, and one of the things that Jalen Hurts has done so well this year is take care of the football. And when Jalen Hurts does play, the Eagles have been able to control the whole tempo of the game and so forth. Gardner Minshew, he's had some success early in his career in Jacksonville. And obviously in that game threw for over 350 yards. But here is a Cowboys team again this year that is leading the league in takeaways. They've now got 30 on the season. They had 4 in that game. They're on the same pace. Last year we were talking about how that team had so many takeaways, and they're on the exact same pace this year. The Cowboys are with 2 takeaways a game. If they get 4 more in the last 2 games of the year, they'll have the same number of takeaways, 34, that they had last season.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it's amazing to see how that's happening for them, interception, fumbles, picking up the ball, running with it. I mean, it's kind of fun to watch, actually, and just because you never know when it's going to happen. But it's kind of cool to see even Bland, grabbing the picks the way he is, playing the way he's going. It just seems like we got guys that know how to find the ball. And so that's going to be the difference because if you watch it statistically, if you win the turnover battle, your percentages of winning goes so far up just in that one key stat alone.
Yeah, and Philadelphia has been proof of that all season. They were 13-1 coming into the game, and they were leading the league in fewest giveaways by the offense coming into that game. All right. You mentioned the cornerback situation, and actually what the Cowboys did in that game, Mackenzie Alexander, who was just picked up a couple of weeks ago, the former Minnesota Viking, was on the field to start the game, and as it turns out, just 14 snaps for him. And Deshaun Wright came through with some big plays in that game, and especially on the last drive of the game, keeping I think it was on the first drive of the game for Philadelphia, made a tackle on the sideline, kept him in bounds, and made the push on Devontae Smith in the back of the end zone on, I believe, the second down play at the 19-yard line when the Eagles were throwing for the end zone. What are your impressions of Wright, the second-year guy out of Oregon State who was the third-round pick last year?
Yeah, I think he's got a tremendous upside. He's looking good, and I know they really, really like him because he's tall, he's lanky, really long, as they say, and he can run. So when you can have a guy like that at corner who's physical, as you just said, he'll come up and make some tackles. It was really, really good to see him, and he got better than he was 2 weeks ago. You could see that playing with a little bit more confidence. So, that just gives another weapon, and that's why Dan Quinn has been able to use a big nickel package, a smaller package, bring McKenzie in, putting Bland at corner, having Bland at nickel, McKenzie Nashawn Wright at corner. It's just, I love watching the chess pieces and seeing how he's trying to match up with everybody so he can have himself in a good situation later on in the year.
Yeah, and what the Cowboys have been dealing with, of course, is the injuries to Jordan Lewis and Anthony Brown, and so they're going deep on their depth chart and picking up guys off the street who do it. Fortunately, they found a guy in Mackenzie Alexander who has some NFL experience. Okay, up front, what do you make? Mike McCarthy had a great quote in yesterday's press conference. He was asked about it. Does he have any concern about the Cowboys pass rush, since over the last 3 games they aren't generating sacks like they were earlier in the season? And McCarthy said the only ones who need to be concerned about our pass rush is the opposition. So are you concerned, George, about the pass rush right now?
Well, yeah, I can't say I'm as relaxed as Coach McCarthy is with that, because we do want to get some pressure. Maybe our expectations are a little too much when you're thinking about Parsons and, you go a game without a sack, this kind of stuff. But I think in the end, I feel like we're trying to fix the back end so much that we haven't concentrated on the front end as much. That's just me. I haven't studied enough of the all 22 yet on this one. But not having Van Der Esch, that hurts. You have to protect Damone Clark you got Luke Gifford in the game as well. You got to be really, really careful about what you do up front to protect the other guy. So I think he's just playing it safe and just trying to rush forward, send the heat when he has to. You got to worry about, can someone cover a corner as well. So I think it's going to slow down until we can get all the pieces together and dial it up once playoffs start.
Okay, what's your play call if you're facing on offense? You're facing 3rd and 30, needing a score on this possession. What would you call up?
Well, from now on, it's going to be straight go ball to T.Y. Hilton every single time. That was absolutely amazing. You're talking about a way to make a splash to the team and to the fans, and just, have a huge play like that is unbelievable to see him make that play. It was awesome.
You go through there, 17 games in a season. There's so many games in a season, and you go back, and at the end of the year, you look back at, oh yeah, that Philadelphia game. What's the one play that sticks out for you in that Philadelphia game? Well, for everybody, it's going to be the 52-yarder to T.Y. Hilton. And you can now see going forward, because this is the first. Of course, he had the other play in the game. He only was on the field, I think, for 11 or 12 plays, but got the PI earlier in the game too. So his presence was felt even when he wasn't catching a pass in that game. But now going forward, and as he gets more and more acclimated, what do you think this does, the presence of T.Y. Hilton, for this Cowboys team as they go into the postseason here in a couple of weeks?
Now, this might be the sneaky positive out of all of the stuff we were talking about with OBJ and all this, but, he actually showed that he can stretch the field. You run past a good corner and beat the safety to the ball. Shows that he still can run and is willing to lay out and try to grab the ball. So that, I think this is going to make this team so much more dangerous when you got a crafty wide receiver like that now to complement with CeeDee Lamb and Noah and Gallup and the tight ends. Man, people are going to have to start picking their which way they want to lose. I think do you want us to throw the ball, or do you want us to get these running backs at you? Figure it out. So it's T.Y. Hilton is a big one for us. That's good.
And then the way he rubs off on the other receivers, he's a professional who is more than willing to give little tips to CD and Michael Gallup and the other young wide receivers on this team. I think it's just a great addition. Speaking of CD, how about the way he's been not only utilized, he's so effective in the slot, but the production here the last couple of months has been to the point where he made the Pro Bowl last week.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. I mean, I know we've been talking about him all year long. Was he the guy? And I think he continues to show it. 120 yards, 2 TDs, big explosive plays. It's outstanding, man. And Bill, I couldn't understand why they didn't try to match up with him at all. We just line up in the slot. They let the nickel stay on him, and he torched that dude.
Right, especially when Avonte Maddox went out of the game. And they had the backup slot, Josiah Scott, and we saw it the week before also against Herndon in Jacksonville, where there was a one possession where 4 different times they're just going to CD every single time. But to your point, when you got Darius Slay and James Bradbury out there as well, I guess it's just a philosophy of Gannon, the DC for the Eagles, just to keep them outside. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is his philosophy, and I promise you, he's thinking about it right now.
What do you think of a potential matchup with the Eagles, with both teams at whatever full strength is, meaning both quarterbacks healthy, if it comes in the postseason?
That would be so exciting to be able to see both of them with Dak and Jalen Hurts on the field together. I still would pick our guys to win. Just because I think we'll be so much more prepared for Jalen Hurts. He brings a different dynamic. Yes, he's a better thrower now, but the running game, we may be more fit. I'm hoping, I don't know what's going to happen with Van Der Esch and how he's going to be feeling, but we're going to need him back to compete as the best that we can against, if we have to face the Eagles later on down the road.
Well, and that's a good thing. The word is on Van Der Esch and Jonathan Haskins, for that matter, is that they should be back for the postseason. And if the Cowboys are going to face the Eagles in the playoffs, it would be a couple of weeks in, and so they will be basically a month or so removed from their respective injuries. All right, quickly on Tennessee on Thursday night. The interesting thing about this game from Tennessee's perspective is they don't need to win this game. They are not going in a good way the last 5 weeks. They've lost 5 straight games. And really, when you look at their schedule, I was looking at it this morning, George. They built a 7-3 record the first 10 games of the season. But if you look at the teams that they beat to get to 7-3 after losing the first 2 games of the year, these are 1-score games, each one of these. They beat Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Washington, Indianapolis again by 9 points, Houston by 7, and then they lost to Kansas City, and then they beat Denver, which just fired their coach, and Green Bay when the Packers weren't going well. Where their season turned was after that Green Bay game. They were 7-3, and I don't know if you remember, but Todd Downing, their offensive coordinator, the plane lands back in Nashville. He gets pulled over for a DWI. Okay, he's still calling plays for them. A week or so later, they fire their GM, Robinson. But here's where it turned. They then had to play Cincinnati and lost, Philadelphia and lost, Jacksonville, which has turned things around with Trevor Lawrence. They lost that game. And then at the Chargers, who were playing very well and just qualified for the playoffs. And then, of course, this week they lost to Houston. So they turned around after being 7-3, and all of a sudden, now they got to face playoff teams for the next 4 weeks, and they lost all 4 of them.
Yes, they're not playing as well as they could be, I don't think. I mean, they're kind of one-dimensional. I think they wanted to be that way. But, just with Derrick Henry, it's not going to be enough. The wide receiver crew, the quarterback play hasn't been as great as it needs to be. And so I think we got a good chance to catch. They're beat up too. I mean, right now it's not just Derrick Henry, but there's a lot of guys that they have hurt. So you're right, Bill. I think they may try to rest some guys. I don't know. Luckily, we're not the NBA where they find teams for resting.
It'll be interesting to see if Derrick Henry plays, because that's the one guy you would think that they might rest. And again, because it comes down to them, they can make the playoffs if they beat Jacksonville, and it doesn't matter what in the season finale. It doesn't matter what they do against Dallas. To your point, against the Texans last week, they were starting two guys on their offensive line who haven't started a game all year, and so they are beat up. And Malik Willis at quarterback. But to wrap this up, George, really what the Cowboys need to do, don't you think, is it's being concerned about themselves, get themselves ready for the playoffs in a couple of weeks, and keep the pressure on Philadelphia. Win this game, make the Eagles go win against New Orleans to clinch the division. And who knows, what if the Saints just won on the road at Cleveland? What if the Saints are able to go to Philadelphia and win this week? Then it comes down to the last week of the season. Cowboys beat Washington, and the Eagles would have to beat the Giants to win the division. Otherwise, the Cowboys in all likelihood not only would win the division, but they, depending on what Minnesota does, could have the first round bye in the playoffs.
I know. Isn't that amazing that we're sitting here at the beginning of the year when Dak went down, we were thinking gloom and doom, didn't have a chance to make the playoffs. Now we're sitting here talking about maybe having a chance to get a bye.
Yeah.
We just need to show up a few things. We gave up a lot of big plays in the passing game. I mean, even with all the movement we were doing, they still had explosive plays. We did too. So we were going tit for tat. Who was trying to win the big play? But if we can eliminate those, we can play with anybody in this league. And we're just going to ask for a little bit of help from New Orleans this week. Y'all go ahead. I'm rooting for you. Let's do our thing.
All right. And we're back in studio on Sunday morning for Cowboys game day after not having a show because of Christmas Day this past week. And so we will not be previewing a Cowboys game on Sunday, but we'll be looking back at the Thursday night game, and maybe we'll preview the Eagles-Saints game coming up on Sunday morning, 10:30 on Cowboys game day on CBS 11. George, appreciate it. Continue to enjoy your holiday week.